Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this month's webinar, Creative Connections, Showcasing Art in the Community. My name is Joshua Chard. I'm the Arts Integration Teacher Leadership Fellow for the Department of, I'm going to start again. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's webinar, Creative Connections, Showcasing Art in the Community. My name is Joshua Chard. I'm the Arts Integration Teacher Leadership Fellow for the Maine Department of Education. I'm also the 2024 Maine Teacher of the Year, and I teach second grade at East End Community School in Portland. And I'm very excited to have this conversation today, and I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Emily Serway. And I'm going to invite Emily to introduce herself.
Hi there, my name is Emily Serway. I've been teaching art in Maine for 22 years and teaching art in general for 25. I'm a national board certified teacher and I'm currently at the high school level. And I'm looking forward to this conversation, Joshua. Thank you.
I'm so glad that you're here. I'm going to add that I've known Emily for a lot of that time that she's been teaching in Maine, if not all of it.
All that, yep.
And Emily has the whole range of experience from pre-K all the way up through high school. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation with her today. And I am going to take it away.
Great.
So, of course, we can't have an educational webinar without posting our learning targets. And so some of our learning targets for today include identify accessible community spaces. Participants will explore various public venues for displaying student artwork and consider factors like accessibility, audience, and impact. We're going to talk about developing meaningful partnerships. Educators will learn how to collaborate with local organizations, businesses, and cultural institutions to support student art exhibitions. And what probably is the most important learning target for today is we're going to talk about empowering student voice and ownership. Throughout the whole year so far, every time I have presented a webinar on arts integration, we have often talked about student voice and ownership. That's one of the amazing things about arts and integrating the arts into the regular classroom setting is that it really gives students ownership into their learning. So we're going to examine ways to involve students in curating, promoting, and engaging with the public about their artwork. I think that I want to let folks know that while we're going to be talking about what can be done across the state, Emily and I do have a Southern Maine lens. So some of the examples that we'll be giving might seem like they're centered on Portland and Southern Maine. What we're hoping is that these examples will serve as inspiration for you and allow you to think about how you can try some of these things and reach out to organizations in your community. And I want to start with cultural representation and identity. Emily, can we talk a little bit about how student artwork can reflect the cultural diversity of the community? And there's all sorts of definitions of cultural diversity of a community, right? It doesn't have to be what we think of as the cultural diversity in our urban centers. Every one of our communities is culturally diverse. And are there ways to incorporate themes of identity, heritage, and social justice to make that display more meaningful?
Absolutely, Joshua. And one of the things that I have always loved about teaching in the Portland schools is that diversity comes in so many different forms. Many of the schools that I've taught at house our special ed departments, and so, for instance, we have functional life skills classes and functional academics classes. So diversity comes in so many forms. As you said. So we've got ways of reaching our students that are special needs students. We've got a very culturally diverse and linguistically diverse student population, especially at the schools that you and I teach at. And I think that when we are culturally responsive teachers, we ask ourselves who the students are in front of us and how can we make the work that we do with them reflect the richness of their personal identities, as well as the community around us. And so some of the organizations that we are lucky enough to have in Portland include the Indigo Arts Alliance, which is focused on Black and Brown artists in the Maine area and empowering those voices. And so the Portland Museum of Art is a real advocate for diversity as well. And I think as we are learning to be culturally responsive teachers, we have to show artwork to our students that helps mirror their experience back to them. And I've I've been working with the Portland Museum of Art on a pretty special project to highlight works from their collection that talk about some of the maybe pieces of artwork that haven't always been on display by artists of color or artists of LGBTQ plus diverse artists that come from all over the world. And so bringing that art back to the classroom matters. And so you're looking right now at a piece that was done by one of my students who it came from the Democratic Republic of Congo originally. And she was able to look at artwork made by a diverse group of artists and really see herself reflected in that work. And then she was able to have the confidence to bring her own cultural identity into the work that she made. And this is a beautiful example of that.
Yeah, I think I want to sort of jump on to what you're talking about culturally responsive teaching, which one aspect of that culturally responsive teaching is making sure students see themselves represented in what is being studied in the classroom. It's also important for students to see multiple representations. Not we think in terms of I want to make sure that everybody sees themselves, but it's also important for everybody to see each other. Can we talk a little bit about how the arts in particular lend themselves to that culturally responsive approach, including talking about how, when we talk about some of our students with disabilities, how exciting creating art and how they can be a part of creating art that can eventually be displayed for the public.
Yes, I love the fact that in an art room, there is if you're doing it the way that I do it, and I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong, but it's a judgment-free zone, and so students are freed to express themselves however they wish to, and making sure that everybody feels empowered to do that is my job. And so our students with disabilities, we've got such a incredibly wide range of ability levels, and everyone can still make something. And I display work all the time that is by my all of my students. And so I think that making sure that my mainstream regular ed students see the work made by my students with disabilities, I think that that's one of the most empowering things in the world, because it shows us all that we're all creative. Everybody, we're all speaking the same creative language.
And I mean,
Um,
as a classroom teacher, I would always say everybody's a mathematician,
yeah,
everybody's a reader. We're coming at
yeah,
those from all different places and from all different experiences and from all different readiness levels. And I think that we can also say everybody's an artist.
yeah,
Everybody has that innate desire and ability within them to create.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting. It's really wonderful. So
I think that when we talk about getting students' work out into the community and providing the community an opportunity to see student work, I'm a theater maker. And as a theater maker, those pathways are really clear, right? That is the absolute, complete, and total purpose for working on a theatrical piece is to put it in front of an audience. And we have a means to do that. We have a space to do that. We have equipment to make that happen. We have the means to publicize it. I think that what I think that I want people to be thinking about is how can we find the parallels between a drama program and a theater program and our visual arts program, and making sure that we get an audience for our students, because that is in essence, that is a performance task. Artists want their work to be seen.
yeah,
We do create for the purpose of creating, but ultimately we want our work to be seen.
yeah. I
What have we
think
got here?
Yeah, I love that, and particularly with like the work that you just jumped to. This is work that was inspired by social justice, and the Red Hand Project is it talks about the sort of shocking, disproportionately high number of um, um, Native American women who are abducted. And I think that this is an issue that maybe people just don't know about. And this student took that, did some research on it, and created these cups with the portraits of the people, and did just an incredible series based on this work. And so I really love the idea that we are communicating, and that in order to communicate, it is a two-way street. And so this work is more powerful with an audience. This work is meant to be shared, and meant to be seen, and meant to be discussed, and to open up a topic that people are uncomfortable with or unaware of. And so that's another purpose for art. And so when we have multiple places to show student work, there's a fearlessness that happens with art that is made by students, because they they haven't they haven't gotten to the point where they're as worried about judgment as some grown-up artists can be. Like, we get in
Yeah,
our own way over this
absolutely.
stuff. And so, and I don't think, I mean, yes, kids are very self-critical, but I think they're also much more willing to take risks with work, especially work like this.
When I
So
look at these pieces, I actually see work that is quite provocative.
yes,
It really it makes you stop and take a breath and think, um, what is happening here? What are we talking about? What is the message that is being communicated here? 5,712 Indigenous women are missing. She
yes,
and that just that statement, she is gone,
yes,
is such a powerful statement. And I also think it really plays into our goal as a state to do a better job of teaching about Indigenous cultures and teaching about Indigenous cultures in the past, but also recognizing that Indigenous cultures exist within the context of today. And what does that mean and what does that look like? So I think that this is really exciting. And I could see that producing a piece like this and then putting it in your backpack and taking it home doesn't have the same impact as having an audience and having someone look at the work and interact with the work and build a relationship with the work.
yes, absolutely. And this artist went on to do a another piece. I unfortunately had I don't know where my photographs of that one are, but with the uptick in violence against Asian Americans, she stamped the names of the victims of violence right after COVID, because so many people were like looking to cast blame on a community that had nothing to do with it. And it was a real, I mean, these were pieces that I could imagine famous artists making, and this child was coming up with this stuff to express the pain that she felt over the Indigenous community experiencing violence against the Asian American community experiencing violence, all because of race, and how we interact with each other in this country over things. And so I think, that work is important to see in the community.
Our
So
students have important things to say, right?
important things to say.
From
We are
from
giving
our
them the voice.
youngest students to our high school seniors, our 5-year-olds, our 4-year-olds in our school have important things to say too. They
Absolutely.
might be different. The things they have to say might be different, and they're coming from a different developmental level. But when we let kids know that what they have to say and what they have to express is important, there's real power in that. There's really an opportunity for students to really sort of sit up tall and say, wait a minute, I do have something important. I do have something worth saying. I do have something that is worth looking at.
And students inspire each other. And I think that the
Absolutely.
the fact that this student took the initiative. I mean, it was a social justice project. That was the prompt, but it inspired other students to take risks with their work and really dig in a little bit deeper because, sometimes kids phone it in and nobody phoned it in after seeing this work. Everybody recognized that there is something really profound here and that you have that we have a voice, that we should be using our voice to talk about the tough things. So, and also to make beautiful things. So it is
Absolutely.
yeah, so this was definitely important work. So
So when let's start talking about getting work out into the community, which is challenging. I think that we need to name the fact that this doesn't just happen, that it
art
isn't.
art teachers do this work, galleries do this work, but like it is, and it is above and beyond your normal teaching. So I agree with
Absolutely.
you
And
completely. So
eventually you can put into place systems where you can go back to those systems and relationships that you've built. But initially, when you're trying to build opportunities to get your students' artwork out into the community, it's going to be a lot of work. I think it's also why it's really important to talk about that mainstream teachers can be a part of this process.
yeah.
That in fact, this shouldn't be the sole responsibility of the art educator. It should be under the leadership and tutelage of the arts educator because you have art specialists in your building. But they actually want to have you come in and participate with this and to work with you and mentor you and help build this. So, what are some local businesses, museums, galleries, public spaces that could serve as display sites, and how can these partnerships be sustained to ensure ongoing opportunities?
I love this because it's I think it takes a little bit of creative thinking. Our first instinct is to put up work in our schools, which is always a
Which
joy
is
to see.
great. It's amazing.
Wonderful. Many of our schools are community centers as well, so people do see that work. But when we can get out of the doors and into the community, something magical happens. Every year in Portland, we have the City Hall Art Show where every single school in Portland chooses work to display, and we have it up for all of May usually, and it is one of those moments where people come out of the woodwork to say, "Oh, I didn't know that this work was being made," or "I didn't know how talented, young people are." And building that awareness then helps people understand why it's important to support these programs in schools. So other places that we've worked with are the Portland Public Library. The Lewis Gallery at the Portland Public Library has a student art show, a student and teacher art show every year, and it's just stunning to see these works. They're curated and displayed in the most professional way, and it's just magical. Portland Museum of Art hosts the Youth Art Month show. The State House in Augusta hosts another Youth Art Month show. Um,
Those are actually, I just was working with the Maine Arts, the director of the Maine Arts Council, and those two shows are actually related to each other. Some of that artwork is starting here in Portland, and then will be moved to the Cross Building. And I will say that as someone who has had meetings at the Cross Building over the last couple of years, though that student artwork that is on display there has been an amazing way for me to pass the time and be inspired by Maine's learners
that's great.
while I'm waiting for an appointment and waiting for a meeting. And I had no idea it was going to be there. I was just someone there who was there for a meeting at the Department of Education. And I walked in, and there were these astonishing portraits, this amazing portraiture. And I couldn't stop. It was like being in a gallery. It was like being in a curated space in a museum. It was really amazing. And it was art created by young people portraying the message, getting out the message that they wanted to share.
And I think it's also it's wonderful for the community, but it's also very empowering for our students to see
No
their work
question.
valued enough to display publicly like this. The Rabkin Foundation, I think it might be on the next slide. Rabkin Foundation, oh, this is more of the library show. This is just, absolutely beautiful work. And again, all student created. And
And I noticed that this is an opportunity for students to actually monetize.
yes,
Artists
absolutely.
deserve to be paid for their work. You and I talk about that all the time.
Yeah,
We're artists and we often don't get paid on an hourly basis what our work is worth.
right,
But it also shows this shows students that yes, there is an opportunity to monetize this, that people want to buy art. I
right,
collect art. I buy art.
right. Yeah, another one. So, Rapkin Foundation uh, worked with me several years ago on an assemblage project, and Leo Rabkin was an assemblage artist who came. I mean, he had hundreds and hundreds of pieces of work, and everything was just, you know, in boxes when he passed away. And then he left his estate to the Rapkin Foundation, and they do incredible outreach with grants. And this show they sponsored with us at Longfellow, they asked students to create assemblage, pieces in the same style that Leo Rabkin did. And then they displayed his work alongside the students. And what we loved about this was it was almost a scavenger hunt. Like the viewers got to come in and say, oh, which one is a student? And it was almost impossible to tell. Like so many of these pieces were just, they were all incredible. And he had such a sense of humor about the work that he made. And I felt like it gave the kids the opportunity to express that sense of humor. So we did a field trip there. We looked at his work. We studied him as an artist, and then we went back and studied assemblage and related it back to that. And then we displayed the work. So that outreach into the community, that sort of full circle experience where you are learning about art and experiencing art and immersed in art and then making art, and then displaying art and then interacting with it as a display, which is entirely different from interacting with a piece of artwork. So it was a very rich experience for everyone.
So I'm thinking about we talked a little bit about how in Portland there's the gallery at the public library, that we do the City Hall art show, and I'm thinking that every school system is part of a municipality that has municipal buildings,
Yes,
right? And so it does seem like that an easy ask to start with would be, can I make a display in my town? Can we do a display at our town hall? If you live in a smaller town that is still a town meeting style of government, the perfect time to do something like that would be just before town meeting and have
absolutely.
work up during that month where you know that a large number of people from your town are going to be going through. You accomplish two things by this. One, you give students an authentic audience for their work. The other thing is that town meeting season is also the season that school budgets are being voted on. And people are
Absolutely.
wondering, what are they getting for their money in the schools? And so if people are going into town hall for their annual town meeting, and they are walking through amazing student work, suddenly there's this incredible opportunity to showcase your school and to celebrate your school in a way that is unique to the arts. The arts get people excited in a different kind of way than results on a math test.
Yes, for sure.
And so I definitely in South Portland, there's the Art in the Park in the summer, and Art in the Park partners with South Portland Public Schools. And so while artists are all through the park selling their work, there are tents set up to display student work. And
That's
that's
great.
always one of the first places I go is to look at the student work. To be honest, a lot of times the student work is better than what's on sale by some of the vendors. So I think that those kind of public spaces are really critical. I also think that you can. This is a harder one. In Portland, we made some progress with this. Right now, we're in a place where a lot of downtowns have a lot of empty storefronts.
I was just thinking that. Yeah. And it's hard because you're asking for something for free, but I've always kind of felt like those storefronts are just sitting there. We should be using them. So,
Or
and
even if you could, if there's a block that is up for lease, and you could coordinate with the renting agent just to put displays in the windows
right.
that stay up for a month so that all the pedestrians going by are seeing it, and you are showcasing your school, and you have a bio of your school. And I think that might be easier. Sometimes in larger communities, it's large conglomerates that are the renting agents for these kinds of spaces. But if you live in a community where you know who happens to own that building,
Right.
that's a great opportunity to reach out and say, hey, we can make your space look prettier while it's sitting empty. We can make it make the space still be exciting and dynamic, even if the doors aren't open for customers or for the public to come into. That space can become a dynamic space and a changing space that people look to and look at until such a time comes that you put a tenant in there.
Yeah, I agree.
I've also had success with coffee shops wanting to display student work or have poetry readings or improv performances. So there are lots of opportunities to look for those public spaces and think outside the box on where they could go, especially in communities that where the town hall or city hall is sort of the hub of the community,
Mhm.
where everything happens. I can even in South Portland, which is a fairly large community, we all have to go to city hall once or twice a year to do something, right? We all have to go to city hall at some point. So that is also for me, it seems like, and these buildings often are very institutional. They're very drab and they're kind of brutal when you go into them.
Mhm.
And so how lovely is it if you go in and you're like, oh, look at this beautiful work that has been displayed here.
It makes
But
people linger just a little bit longer in a place that they would never do so. So
that's really a good point.
trying to
And
get out as fast as you can when you go to, like pay a parking ticket.
right, exactly. And I feel like that is engenders community,
It does.
right? Is suddenly maybe there are two of you are looking at this artwork suddenly, and you look over the other person and say, "Hey, I didn't know that Deering High School was doing work like this. I
Right,
didn't know East End Community School students were producing work like this. Let's have a conversation about that. This is a school that's right in our neighborhood. My kids went to that school."
right.
Um, so I think that that's really good. That does bring us to how do we protect student work, and is it always possible to protect student work? And what do you think are the best display methods for indoor and outdoor exhibits?
Yeah, this is such a tough one. We at the City Hall Art Show many years ago, we had a jewelry program at our school, and a couple of pieces of jewelry were stolen out of a display case. Like the person had to open the display case and take the work. And I was always disheartened by that, but it's rare that stuff like this happens. But it does happen. And so I think that explaining to students there is inherent risk, especially, I feel, especially with three-dimensional objects. Somehow they're just, you know, hand size, and they're right there in front of you. So ways that I deter theft is I actually I use like double-sided tape on the bottom of my pieces, just because the second you pull it up, everything kind of starts coming with it and you instantly set it back down. Like if you're disrupting the entire display rather than just a quick grab, then it scares you into just walking away and leaving things alone. And then the display just looks rumpled. It doesn't look like somebody took something. So I mean, I think there's ways of dealing with it. Under glass is ideal, but it's not practical for many of the types of displays that we do, such as the City Hall Art Show. So if you want to display 3D artwork, there is inherent risk there. And just explaining that to students, I
Yeah,
think
I think that students really need to understand that,
they
and
do.
that artists in general. I
And
mean,
sometimes work breaks, you're transporting other people's beautiful things. I've never had that happen, but that's not to say trip on a step and your box goes flying. I mean, that is definitely, it is a risk. So, artwork is fragile and ephemeral, and unfortunately, sometimes, the student work is the casualty of that, but
the truth
very
is
rare.
that could happen in the hallways at your school too.
Oh, for sure.
And in
Absolutely.
fact, I would
It
um,
might be more
hazard
dangerous.
guess that there's more of a risk of artwork being damaged um, when displayed in the hallways of your school
Right.
than in a public space.
Yep.
But I think that it's really important for students to understand, and I think that there's teachable moments here. I mean, we've seen as protest artwork being damaged in major museums across the world. And so it becomes a teachable moment that art is, as you said, art is fragile. Art is easily damaged.
Mhm.
And the art that we consider priceless, the art that we consider part of our artistic history, the pieces of art that get taught about in art history classes are always at risk. They're always at risk when they're displayed in a public place.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's talk about obviously your students are creating the art. Um, are there lessons that can be taught about curating art installation, promoting the art show, um, giving artist talks to build confidence and leadership skills?
Yeah, I mean, like when I think about the Lewis Gallery, that is a show that is co-curated by the curator of the gallery itself and a student, and it's usually done as a capstone project for the student. And so, for any student interested in going on to pursue museum studies or curation or art history, working on a show like that is extremely empowering. And I think having students help hang the work. A lot of high school students come and help hang the work at our City Hall art show, helps them really understand the work that goes into display, it being as a very big part of what an art teacher spent their time doing. So
Mm.
I think that it's nice to sort of share that with the students to give them some agency over it. Um, and I think there's also a lot of ownership that takes place when students have to like they have an idea and they come to you and say, "Hey, how do I make this happen?" And guiding them through the process of obtaining money or materials for the work that they want to make. How do I go about making sure that I have permission to do this work if it's a public installation, such as a mural or changing the space in some way? And you can see this was one of the murals that we did with Ryan Adams a couple of years ago at Deering. And I wrote a grant to get the money for this from the Nichols Foundation and Painting for a Purpose. And so we all worked together to obtain the materials and organize it and get permission. And kids were involved in the design and the decision on what to make the mural of. And if you skip two slides ahead, you're going to see the finished piece, and it does correlate to this last thing, but it has become a center point of the school. And you can see the musicians are performing there. We've had performances there. We've had every staff photo gets taken out there. All the Unum volunteers, when they come, they take their photo back there. And it has empowered the students who worked on it, and it has empowered students ever since. And I think it having students take ownership through the process all the way through makes them invested in the final outcome, which is great.
And a mural like this, you can't tell from these pictures, but this mural is located where if you're entering the high school through from the parking lot, you're going to walk by this mural. Um, it's front and center and it's permanent, which means that students who were involved with this mural project, unlike a display at City Hall or in Town Hall or your public library, this is an art installation. This is a piece of art that is going to be there as long as the building is there.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so you're going to have students whose kids come and get their picture, students who worked on this piece, whose children come and get their picture taken in front of this mural. And
Mhm.
it also creates an ownership in the school. I'm going to guess that we know that what we know in public spaces is when we take big blank walls and cover them in murals, there is less vandalism, there
Yes.
is less tagging,
Yep.
because there is an inherent respect that people have for that work that has happened. It's why cities right now, there's a huge trend in urban environments to cover every blank wall with
Mhm.
a gorgeous art installation, with a gorgeous mural, because people leave it alone. They love it and they look at it and they celebrate it, but generally they don't vandalize it.
Well, I mean, this is 4 years going, and knock on wood, it's still, and it is the most like we were washing graffiti off this space year after year after year,
Right,
and
because why wouldn't I? I mean, it's a perfect space to tag. It's a perfect space to leave your mark,
right?
right?
But we did that as a group, as every art class that I taught that year was involved in this. And so there was incredibly diverse group of students working together to put this message that was their choice out there. And I think that it has it was a sort of an unofficial motto, and now it has become the mantra of the entire school.
It is the mantra of the entire school. A full disclosure, I spent 4 years working at Deering after school, directing the drama program, and many people now use All One School in their emails. It's part of their email signature.
Yeah.
And that's pretty powerful. So it has become a symbol of the school. And so this is different than trying to get it out into your community and trying to get it out into your town. This is creating permanent artwork for your school. This is a legacy piece. This is
Right.
a legacy piece for Deering High School.
Yeah.
And I think that is exciting and empowering for students to create
And
those
I
kind of legacy
and
pieces.
I think working with Ryan was such an exceptional experience for our students. He is incredible. He is a powerhouse. His work is everywhere now, and he's a famous artist. And for them to say, "Wait a minute, he's the guy who did XYZ," and me to be like, "Yeah, he's going to come and work with you." It was mind-boggling and so empowering. And he was so splendid with the kids. He really, he loved doing it. He did it because he wanted to. He did it because he enjoys it. He did it I mean, it was not just about it being a job. It was about being
Hmm.
something that can help empower students. And he felt that as strongly as I did. So
Well, and when you look at that finished product, it looks like a mural that you would see having been made professionally on any building in a downtown area,
yeah,
right?
and it
It,
is.
it-
It is equivalent. It is the exact equivalent. So we use
and
the same materials, we use the same sort of, approach. And yeah, it was an incredible experience. Yeah.
so how do we get the community to interact with our displays? Are there digital elements that we could use, public events, celebrations? How can we enhance engagement with our work?
I love sort of capitalizing on the First Friday movement. I think that's one of the best ways that we can get people to see the work that we put out there, is to sort of say, "Hey, we're doing it too." Like, guess what? We're going to be on the path that you're taking anyway, as you go through your downtown and look at artwork in galleries and museums for First Friday. Student artwork being displayed alongside those pieces is very, very powerful. Other wonderful ways of doing this. I mean, I think everybody kind of burned out a little bit during COVID on putting work into digital galleries, but I do still think that there's space for that. I think that it's really nice when you can click on a website and find terrific student artwork. I'm not sure how much traffic it always necessarily gets, and seeing the work in person is always better. But um, I mean, I think that there's a lot of you know a lot of fun that can be had with digital displays.
And
But
I would say if you create a digital display, or your students, because our students are perfectly capable
oh yeah.
of creating that digital display, The Department of Education will amplify that for you.
Mm,
We have good news from the DOE that goes out in every newsletter from the Department of Education. That is a section of every newsletter. You submit your project to Good News from the DOE. They will amplify it on their social media. They will
that's
amplify it on their website. If you reach out to me, I can include it in my twice a month newsletter. So there are opportunities for those things to be amplified outside of the sphere of your school organization. And something that's nice about that is that means that someone in Aroostook County could look at the work being produced by students in York County
right.
and vice versa. And so I think that that's really that's something to think about. And again, particularly with older students, they certainly have more technological savvy than I do. I mean, the truth is, in some ways, my second graders do as well. But definitely, our older students, that could be a project that they take on. It
Yeah.
could be a capstone project for someone. Um, it could become a gallery that is constantly being added to. And it continues to be a living document of work year after year after year. I think that people love an appetizer. People love an opening reception.
Yeah, that's true.
People love the opportunity to get a little dressed up and see their neighbors
Yeah.
and see the excitement on their children's face as their children realize that I'm a part of this thing that is so much bigger than me. Um, so people love that. I am assuming that for your mural, that although it was some people could watch the process of it being made, would assume there was a celebration and an official unveiling of the mural when it was completed.
Yeah, and I think people really just were beyond excited about it. And it was that image with the musicians playing out there, that was something that we had been wanting to do anyway. And so having a space like that where we could have these little like end of year parties out there. We have our culture day is out there. It's just it has become sort of like a celebratory hub, which is great.
And Emily, I would say that that was a dead space before.
Oh,
That was
completely
a dreary,
was awful.
dark,
That
leaf,
70s
leaf and
architecture with
litter filled, dreadful space.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
now it's a space that's full of life.
Yeah.
Um, That's odd wording. What strategies can educators use to encourage parents and community members to participate and engage in art-related activities?
Right. I think communication is key. I think when we involve parents and community in the things happening in our schools, that it reminds people why we pay taxes, right? Like it reminds people that your money is going to do good work with kids. It shows people that that our students have a voice that needs to be heard and deserves to be heard. And I think a lot of the outreach that I do is just through our school platform, Reach My Teach, that like helps me get the word out to as many people as I can. And what I love about that program is that I can say, oh, so and so's artwork's being shown, and I can click on the email or text going to the parents, the guardians, and the teachers of the students so that everybody's in the loop. It goes to their counselors, like it's wonderful. And so building all that buzz happens. We send postcards, like physical actual postcards to tell people about the youth art, or to the City Hall art show.
I think that I have found in this era of email and social media,
Yeah.
people love getting a card in the mail.
People
People love
do.
getting a handwritten card in the mail.
And you can hold it and you can put it on your wall or your refrigerator, and
Absolutely.
it reminds you to go and do it rather than this sort of like, oh, I got a text about that and then forget
Now
about
I'm going to move on to the next thing that beeps at me on my phone.
Yep, absolutely.
Um, Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of power in that. I think that again, it kind of loops back to that whole idea of why do we create? Why are we making the art? And absolutely, when we're integrating art, either in the art room or we're doing integrated art experiences in the classroom, certainly one of the reasons for that is to learn about artists and artistry and how we is to learn the how. But we
Mhm.
really in the when we're talking about wanting to do performance-based assessments with students, this is really an opportunity for kids to see that
Yeah.
my work this is what artists do. I am an artist.
We're
And my
demonstrating our understanding through physical means and hands-on experiences. And interesting conversation with my students today. They were talking about a, you know, a class where it's all just, they were like, I wish it was hands-on because I think I'd understand it better. And I thought, all right, well, how do you teach that particular subject hands-on? And we had a really interesting discussion about what you could do to teach this particular subject in a hands-on way. But it was them exercising their critical thinking skills, which is what we do with visual arts. It's them asking important questions, using visual thinking strategies, not taking the things around them for granted at face value, but asking deeper questions. And isn't that what art is? Another function of art is to push our thinking and to question our comfort zone and ask ourselves why we think the things that we think. And it helps us grow in more ways than one.
I
So
think it also helps us become more observant,
absolutely.
right? Because
Yep.
we tend to, as a culture, we are at a place now where we spend a lot of times with our heads down
We're consuming.
working. And so anything that makes you slow down and look around. I'm thinking about a project that I did in my classroom as part of Wabanaki Studies in third grade. In Portland, we look at our Wabanaki Studies is through the lens of the Presumpscot River
Mhm.
and what the Wabanaki people's relationship is with the Presumpscot River as river protectors. And as part of that, we hatch and raise Atlantic salmon fry to be released into the river. And so I'm going to be frank and tell you that the unit does not involve a lot of art. And so one of the things that I brought into the unit was looking at botanical art
Mhm.
and then students showing the life cycle, the lifestyle, salmon,
The lifestyles of the rich and
the
famous.
lifestyles of the rich and famous salmon, the life cycle of the salmon, um, inspired by works by great botanical artists. And I can promise you that my students had a much deeper understanding of that life cycle because they had engaged in creating art in a way that was slow and calming. And it wasn't just information being thrown at them. And now we're moving on to the next thing. You have to be willing to take the time to do it.
And you have to, and
Creating,
they synthesize information. And so when we can do multiple disciplines, multidisciplinary learning through art, it galvanizes everything a student learns. If they have to draw and label the parts of a salmon's life cycle, they are more likely to remember that in the future because they have taken the time to use multiple senses to do that work.
absolutely.
It,
And when they're done, there's such a huge sense of accomplishment.
right.
Look at, for my students, they have created an entire body of work, multiple watercolor. And I'm not an art teacher. I have an art brain, and I'm a theater maker, and I understand and appreciate art, but I'm not an art teacher. That is not part of my skill set. It's not part of what I'm qualified to do. I'm really good at teaching kids how to read. But because I have such a deep appreciation for art and art history and art theory, the work that my third graders produced far exceeded my wildest expectations. It was work that you would have had a sophistication that you would not have expected from 9-year-olds.
And isn't that so telling that like what students are capable of is so much more than the sum of its parts, right? Like when they are invested in their learning and can demonstrate that learning through multiple modalities, they blow you out of the water every time. It is extraordinary. You too.
No question.
So.
All right, want to tell a little about this?
Oh, this is another community sponsored mural. This was sponsored by Painting for a Purpose. Three students came to me with an idea and they wanted to make a deering ram mural that was also, unusual and funny. And man, they did it. And these guys spent months on this. Months. Every time I turned around, these guys were in the hallway working on this. And I don't know, like they left their mark on the school. It's really just it's engaging. People love it. It sparks conversations.
And
It's
joy.
it's
To me, it's just
it's
incredibly joyful.
wonderful. It is incredibly joyful. And I think it was also really empowering for me to say, I value your work enough to say yes to you putting it on the wall. Of course I do. I want to see this crazy thing up there. I want to see how you approach this. And he was like, I want to do it all in purple. I said, I think that's a great idea. How many purples can you make? And he said, I don't know, but I'm going to try. And I mean, I can't count the number of purples in there.
Right. And so you've got color theory, you've got color mixing going on,
Yeah,
and suddenly you've got this whole, I'm sure this student hadn't really thought in the past of how do I make different purples?
right.
And
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. He's doing commercial art at Pads now, which is great. So,
I'm gonna just go to another image. Talk a little bit about this image.
this is another mural that was all created by students. Um, I think I had to paint the top part of the sky because it was too high for them to reach without getting on scaffolding. But and again, this was community funded. This was a grant funded mural, and the kids were super into the dragon book that I had, and they wanted to do something with a dragon, and we talked about it, and we drew out ideas, and each kid in the school, so there's about 400 kids, every kid had a hand in this mural. And again, today I was talking to some of my former elementary students who are now my high school students about this piece, and they were like, do you remember that mural? And I was like, yeah, I remember it. It's like, like, but to them, it was such a formative experience, such a memorable moment in their life cycle as an elementary kid. And I had kindergartners all the way up through fifth graders working on this mural for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I mean, they had so much fun and they learned so much. And yeah, one of them was so funny. And she was like, I just remember that I had to, go over something that somebody else had painted and I felt really bad, but he didn't do it right. And I was like, oh my God. Like in the moment, she must have been agonizing over that, but she remembered it years and years later. And we were just reminiscing and laughing so hard about this. But I mean, the amount of like learning and understanding that went into painting with acrylic, large scale on a wall. I
On a
mean,
wall. Well, let's be clear. If you're in
amazing.
elementary school and you get the chance to paint on the walls,
They'll never forget it. I remember very little of my elementary school experience. These guys, as seniors and juniors right now, remember doing this when they were 6, 7 years old. Oh.
so included, we have a few important links. When this is up on my Padlet, I will make sure that these links are included on my Padlet. We're running short on time, so I want to be mindful of the fact that you have taken time out of your afternoon. We both were teaching all day today, so but we'll have these links will be up on my Padlet.
Yeah.
And Emily, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us today and talk about this important thing. When we give students authentic audiences, it creates experiences that are formative and that they will not forget, that they will carry with them forever. When I think about the opportunities that I had when I was a child many, many, many years ago to perform for an audience, and for me, it was music and theater. Like you said, I don't remember much from my school experiences, but I remember being up in front of people and having an authentic audience and being celebrated by an audience.
Yeah.
So, here are some links. You can visit the Maine Department of Education homepage. And teachers, I strongly encourage you, whether it's arts related or some other amazing and exciting thing that's happening in your classroom or your school, let's get that out to the people in the state of Maine through the Maine Department of Education's Good News page on their newsletter. I alluded to my Padlet. Um, my Padlet is full of has all of my webinars so that I have done so far. Our newsletter, you can sign up for our newsletter. It's arts and civics uh, called Integrate This. And every 2 weeks, we put out some tidbits. And finally, you can also visit the Teacher Leader Fellows page at maine.gov/DOE/teaching and learning. I'm Joshua Chard, your Arts Integration Fellow for the 2024-2025 school year. My friend Emily Serway, it's always so much fun to hang out with you, whether it's in person or online. Um, Thank you for watching and taking the time. You can email me if you have questions or you would like more information about ways that you can get involved with displaying your students' artwork out in the community. Thanks so much, Emily.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.